Especially today is I think very important one. We all nowadays we are all talking about the real interoperability of the data for the European Common Data Space, and the standardization is the one of the most important thing to achieve it. And today we will talk about the standardization in water sector. So mostly we will talk about the challenges and opportunities, and we have a wonderful 4 speakers for that. But before we start the session, I would like to announce that this session will be recorded and will be published in the NAIADES website and YouTube channels. So if you feel that it should be, then please send your opinion in the chat box. And also during the presentation or after the presentation, feel free to post your questions in the chat box. I will check the time to time, and then we'll deliver that to the speakers. And also after the webinar, please share your thought about this webinar through your social media channels. You can use the NAIADES webinars, or just to put the NAIADES or water standardization, and then wherever it's more relevant on your side, then please share your thought about this. I'm Eunah Kim. I'm head of the research and development of the UDGA, and I'm also the Science Advisory Board member of FIWARE. And then I worked in standardization bodies, standardization activities for a long time, about 15 years, among all my research research experience of 25 years. I spend a lot of times on standardization. So I'm really happy to moderate this session, and then I would like to have a good discussion with you guys. We will have a 4 presentation, as I said before. First speaker will be Dr. Aitor Corchero from NAIADES, that he will share his thought about standardization in the water sector. So he will deliver the overall trend and things. And then we will have Dr. Ramy Fathy. He has a very long experience in ITUT, and then also he has an IEEE and then all other standard bodies. So we will get a bit broader point of view of the standardization activities and perspective of smart water. And we will have Dr. Alberto Abella from FIWARE. He's leading the smart data models at the moment, so that he will share his expertise on Agile standardization for the water domain. Our last presenter will be Dr. Philippe Cousin from EGM, that he will share his work result from the Aqua3S Water standardization actions. So after that, after each presentation, I will give the audience a short time to make questions, and then after finishing all presentations, we will also get the questions, and we'll do the panel discussion. So I will welcome Dr. Aitor. I'm sorry, I have to make a correct pronunciation. Corchero. Aitor Corchero is a senior researcher and R&D project manager in the Applied Artificial Intelligence R&D group of the EURECAT Technology Center. He is involved in water domain, semantic web, and IoT associations. And currently, he's a chair of the Water Management Action Group of the Aitor, and also chair of the Standardization Interoperability Action Group on ICT for Water Cluster. He's a leading standardization activities in NAIADES project, and also I think the other DW 2020 project actions. Please welcome Dr. Corchero, and then we'll listen his presentation.
Thank you very much, Eunah, and everyone. Just to let us the opportunity to present here the advances of the NAIADES projects in terms of standardization in the water sector. So, what we'll talk about this presentation, we will talk a little bit about the importance on standardization in the water sector, just to pass a little bit on the trends on different kind of standardization that will be overall divided the digital to physical standardization, one's more related to infrastructure, metrics, procedures, and the other one that is emerging, that is more focused on the part of how to including new digital assets into.
Oui, c'est Philippe Cousin, ouais.
Sorry, Philippe.
Et je reviens sur ta question sur la mesure que tu as envoyée à Florian, parce que bon, lui.
And a part of this, we will pass to the work that we done on NAIADES, in which we will expose the tool that we elaborated, the simple tool we elaborated to monitor standards, but also to see the trends in the water domain. Just to finalize with the remarks. So, in relation, what is important, or why is this important in standardization in water sector? First of all, it's just to ensure responsible management of water, in the distribution, but also in the waste management, and also to make a forefront just to reduce the effects of climate change and to make an efficient use of the water under some part of Europe are living water scarcity. So over this, there are standard methods just to how to use efficiently the water, how to monitor water around the different infrastructure, and how they are the procedures just to make efficient the use of water inside the infrastructure, using controlling the pumps, controlling the water quality, metrics for these aspects. But also there are a lot of that are not standard per se, but there are good practices that are put on moving on to different citizens just to make this responsible management of the water. Also, it is important just to ensure and to make a forefront from the hygiene of the water infrastructure. That is just to ensure correct methods or standards, common guidelines to ensure secure and safe operations of the infrastructure. This will cover not only the use of potential materials, the use of potential ICT tools, but also procedures to online and offline procedures just to measure water quality, how to protect ecosystems, and all these case stuffs. And the third important thing is just how to promote and foster the knowledge exchange between different infrastructure. Considering similarities and common approach between infrastructure, they make it possible to integrate infrastructures, like for example water and energy, and also exchange different standard procedures for managing this both infrastructure as a whole and more in the forefront of the smart city that is being implemented. So thinking of that or on this importance, at the end, it is a challenge for the standards just to engage stakeholders, but also building what the Water Europe says, that is constructing and building the smart water society. That means involving all stakeholders to promote, to pushing up standards in order to go or break the limits of the management of the water infrastructure to more inclusive. At the end, all the water standards have moved on from private ones for specific standards and procedures let me say, in a protected way, and they have been moving on towards the use of more open standards where all the community is involved, and then we leave it an inclusion and also openness of the water sector during these past years. So what different standards we see with Leavitt is more focused on physical infrastructure standards, let me say, and the other way, digital standards. I'm more in the part of the digital standards rather than the physical infrastructure standards, but also I'm involved in here in Spain in the Sen Water community work of standards that also reported to the ISO standards on the same matter. And on the digital part, I'm part of the ICT for Water cluster, but also with Alberto that we'll talk later, we are also involved in FIWARE Foundation just to promote the use of more digital tools, more data change assets, just to make knowledge exchange in the water sector. So what is more or less make these standards? It's more focused on, and considering the diagram of the ICT for Water cluster is most covering the entire water value chain that covers use, reuse, sanitation, and supply. Also, it involves different infrastructure in the small circle that finally contributes to different ICT tools, monitoring tools for quality, Nexus tools, governance tools, monitoring operations, but also the combination between water and industry, water and urban, and water and agricultural use. So they involve a plethora of tools that on the digital part, it requires interoperability, it requires data change, but it also requires correct methods for trustworthy artificial intelligence. But on the other hand, we have all the infrastructure, all the pipes, all the materials, all the tanks, all the physical assets that they require some procedures, methods to ensure safe and secure water use, water treatment, and water operation at the end. So it is both of parts are important and interrelated and requires one to the other just to make and to establish common methodologies, common strategies to manage all the entire water cycle. So for the physical part, we are talking about infrastructure materials, also indicators for water quality, metrics for water quality, how procedure on how to measure, for example, water quality, a part of the materials that is being used on the pipes, on the tanks, and on different all on different standard procedures in that regards. And on the other hand, the digital part is the thing that we mentioned. It's just to not only to data change, but trustworthy AI, but also to elaborate online monitoring tools, sensors, also interoperability, but also reference, the elaboration of reference architectures, the promotion of reference architecture for water sector, as we did it in NAIADES. That one activity was to report to the I2T reference big data architecture for water sector, but also to introduce trustworthy, confident artificial intelligence methods, algorithms, datasets, just to evolve the management of the water infrastructure. So what we did it in NAIADES. In NAIADES, we collected some of the initiatives that we have it for Okay. In NAIADES, we collected of the initiatives for being in Europe and worldwide in kind of standardization, and part of this work have served just to contribute and to report not only for the ICT for Water cluster, but also to the ICT rolling plan of 2019, 2020, and 2021. So this work has been served just to establish the strategies for driving the European Commission on the situation of the standardization and the needs or requirements for new pathways on these regards. So what we did, we implemented a small web page that covers and collects all the water standardization landscape. We collected as all initiatives. We elaborate a catalog of the water standards for monitoring, for monitoring current and upcoming activities on these standardization by these standardization bodies. It covers most of the ICT standards because now it's more focused on ICT reference architecture on that regards. And what we figure out is just that standards are moving on not only to water but also to establish interrelation between different sectors. It is important water sector in the digital part water sector, but there is also several standards in relation with water energy interrelation, but also water food interrelation. So, and water agricultural interrelation. So we figure out this trend on the standards, on some kind of standards, but also we, in the digital aspect, we are also see the need just to focus on more artificial intelligence methodologies. We see standards that refers to big data architectures for how to establish monitoring and control tools, how to establish open APIs, how to move on or to visualize and to establish or reinforcing consumer relationship. We also be part of the Nexus I mentioned, but also on the elaboration of physical systems for fast or combining offline with online monitoring. But there is still pending how we will or could standardize AI to make it more confident and also to standardize all the data behind these AI-driven algorithms. And also in each of the standards, we see a detailed view of the standards with a link to the different initiatives, and then to make it the all accessibility to the documents and to the working groups that are working on this kind of standards that we cataloged. And just to finalize this small presentation, mention that standards provide solutions to ensure water efficiency, quality, also ensuring harmonization, safety, transparency, and sustainability. We cover all value chains, but also in the ICT part, all the ICT or data value chain. And on the other part, the physical part, they cover also all the different water chains for the different infrastructures that cover the entire value chain. So also, most of the standards are moving on to be open standards, just to provide engagement of the communities, but also to facilitate, to promote the use of the wider use of this standard. And finally, by bringing accessibility to the standards, they also contribute and to break different silos and contribute to generate finally new business models. So thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to make this presentation, and of course we are open for different questions for the audience.
Thank you very much, Aitor. I will give floor to the audience. I think that we have a very nice presentation to see the whole landscape of the smart water standardization. So I think that this would be the very good starting to go details of each different standard bodies, challenges and current status and activities. Is there any questions? And then you could put it to the chat box, or you could directly say, okay, we have questions. Ulf?
Yeah, hi. I'm Ulf from Ecological Institute working on the Digital Water City project. And I have a question to you. You mentioned that one of the important aspects is in the future to involve Nexus aspect into digital standardization. So my question is, maybe you can give a good example how this could look like.
Yeah, for example, there is a lot of opportunities just to, for example, measure the efficient or to establish methods for efficient use of water in agriculture, but also on the other hand to measure good water quality of the groundwater. That is important aspects, and how to there is a lack of standards on. Not so much on that sense. That could be important to bring on the forefront, for example.
Thank you.
Yep, welcome.
Is there any other questions from the audience? Okay, in that case, we move to the next presentation, and then at the end of the whole 4 presentation, we'll be back and then gather the more questions, because maybe that's the very landscape style of the presentation, so that after listening other presentation, the audience may come up with other questions. So so that we will invite Dr. Ramy Fathy here Dr. Ramy Fathy is a senior executive with 20 years of technology and regulatory experience in the digital transformation and telecom space. Especially, he is actively engaged in standardization in the IEEE and ITOT. In 2021, he has joined the IEEE Standard Association Standard Board as a board member. He's also serving as a vice chairman of one of the standing committee, the IEEE SA NESCOM. Also, in 2016, he has been elected to serve as a vice chairman of the ITOT Study Group 20, where the IoT based on the standardization is actively discussed. That he's currently serving as a co-chair of the recently established ITOT focus group on artificial intelligence and Internet of Things for digital agriculture. So I think that we could hear the deep insight about the standardization from Ramy. Welcome him, and then we will listen to his presentation.
Thank you very much, and good morning, colleagues. It's indeed a pleasure to be with you here today, and thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to share my views with you. Shall I share my screen, or you're going to do that?
Yeah, I think it's better that you screen, and then you have a direct control over your presentation.
Absolutely. If you can give me one moment, please. Can you share? Can you see?
Yes, we are seeing your screen.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right. So thank you very much, and again, indeed a pleasure to be participating in this particular webinar series. So my name is Ramy Ahmed Fathy, and as you, thank you for the introduction. I'm currently the vice chairman of Study Group 20 in the ITOT, which is the lead study group which develops standards related to Internet of Things and smart cities, including its many applications in different verticals. That would include, of course, aspects related to digital agriculture and smart water management as well. And I'm also the co-chair of the recently established ITOT FAO focus group on AI for digital AI and IoT for digital agriculture as well. So I'm going to capitalize on some of the key messages that the previous speaker have expressed, and I'll start by a fundamental premise that we all know about what is a smart city. We all know that, of course, the ITU and other UN agencies in the past, we have worked very closely in trying to come up with a solid and internationally accepted definition of a smart city. What is a smart city? There is no doubt that everyone now understands that it is simply the merge, the use of different technologies together in order to provide better services for our citizens. If you want to specifically mention a formal definition, we would say that a smart and sustainable city is an innovative city. So there is an element of innovation here that uses ICT, information and communication technology, and other means. So the issue is not solely focusing on using ICT. We could have other means. For example, we could have better business processes, better process re-engineering for the way we operate our city, for the way we manage our city, etc. So in principle, it's an innovative city that uses ICT and other means to open the door for a lot of possibilities. To do what? To improve the quality of life, efficiency of urban operation and services, and competitiveness, while ensuring that this would meet the demand, the needs for the present and future generations. Of course, with respect to what? With respect to sustainability dimensions that would include economic, social, environmental, as well as cultural aspects. So this is the formal definition that we have adopted inside the ITU, as well as in other UN agencies. And so in a nutshell, small cities, they leverage artificial intelligence, they leverage Internet of Things, they leverage other emerging technologies to enhance, for example, different vertical sectors, including waste management, transportation, street lighting, water management, etc. So this is the fundamental premise that we are basing our work on. We use technology in order to enhance our vertical operation. So that is one point. The second idea that we have to be wary of is that there is this interrelationship between the water, the energy, and the food, the agriculture. We call it water energy nexus, water energy food nexus, water energy food agriculture nexus. So in a way, of course, pretty straightforward. We need water to produce energy, and vice versa. Energy is definitely needed to abstract, to store, to distribute, to treat, and process water. That would, of course, include, for example, heating, cooling, purification, desalination of water, etc., etc. And to make things even more clear, water and wastewater sectors account for some contribution in the electricity use. We said some estimates count for 4%. We have seen some percentages in the previous presentation, maybe slightly different percentages. But the point that we would like to make is water and wastewater account for a particular percentage of the electricity use. And this particular share is expected to rise. On the other hand, for municipalities, water and wastewater facilities account for the largest consumption of electricity, representing around from 30 to 50% of the local authority total electric energy bill. So in a sense, we get this feeling, this understanding that there is a deep relationship between water and energy. If you saved water, you're saving energy. If you saved energy, you're better in preserving your environment. So, aspects related to agriculture is also a very important aspect. We know, as a matter of fact, that agriculture is one of the major consumers of water. And in the context of smart farming and digital farming, of course, AI and IoT find various water-related applications, including, for example, but not limited to, smart water irrigation systems. We have soil moisture monitoring. We have rainwater harvesting. We have plant monitoring. We have livestock monitoring. So again, we are using technology in order to enhance our production and to have better informed decisions in the way we are managing our cattle or in the way we are managing our farm in principle. However, there is the issue, of course, of the agricultural nexus. As I said, agricultural production is considered the largest global water user. It accounts for around 90% of the global fresh water consumption over the past century. And we have all seen that the irrigated agricultural sector is creating substantial environmental pressures. For example, by withdrawing large quantities of water over a large period of time. And this particular excessive water withdrawal for irrigation could leave rivers and wetlands unable to support ecosystems if there is over withdrawal of these water resources. Another aspect as well is the issue of again, the energy relationship. So approximately 30% of the global energy consumption originates from food production and supply. So there is some potential negative environmental aspects associated with our agricultural activities. And this brings the more general context, the more general aspect that we need to consider while we are thinking of smart farming and smart agriculture. So again, two complementing or two opposing views here. We use technology to enhance our solutions, to enhance our production, to enhance our farm management. On the other hand, technology could have a particular downside in terms of energy consumption, higher energy consumptions, of course, and some aspects, some environmental aspects as well that need to be considered. So in order to properly frame that challenge that we have ahead, we need to understand that smart water management is not a luxury anymore. So this is one particular angle. IoT, AI, and other emerging technologies are expected definitely to optimize and rationale water abstraction, water distribution, water levels monitoring, and water quality monitoring, but at the expense of what? And this needs to be framed properly. It needs to be critically analyzed. It needs to be understood in order to develop the proper strategies and the proper standards in order to have a sustainable way of managing our water resources. So there is a real need to adopt smart water management techniques across agricultural, industrial, and urban use cases. So in that sense, if we wanted to understand the challenges, we have to make the proper classification, understand the different use cases, understand the requirements of each set of these particular use cases, frame the environmental challenges that we are facing, and try to come up with sustainable measures in order to address all these dimensions. So what are the key issues from a technological point of view? We have the issue of scalability, of course. I could deploy a particular solution. It could work on a limited scale. However, if we wanted to scale it up to, for example, large farms or even beyond, we could end up with aspects related to interoperability and viability of the solutions. So in that sense, I've been in touch with a couple of farmers, and in Egypt here, I'm based in Egypt, and sometimes the farmers, for example, and specifically those who have no idea of technology and they have no idea of how they can implement the best solution for the problem at hand, they could be faced with a particular solution, an excellent solution. However, the issue of interoperability, that particular solution could come up from a single vendor, from a single particular party. So vendors have this particular tendency of, locking the customer, and it's a clever idea. I mean, that's the way the market, it is what it is. So sometimes it is extremely important to stress on the importance of interoperability, building the right interfaces, open up the data sets in order to make sure that no particular vendor lock-in scenario could jeopardize your sustainability on the long run. Another problem also facing the industry is the issue of viability, the financial viability. Small and medium farms, specifically in developing countries, in Asia, Latin America, Africa, could even some parts in Europe, could be extremely expensive for the small and medium farms, small and medium-sized farms. And accordingly, there is a tremendous need in order to develop solutions that would be viable, low-cost solutions, viable, and at the same time respect the angles of the environmental aspects as well. So in that sense, we could need particular standards, first of all, standards to open up the data sets, standards related to interoperability and scalability, standards related to how can you properly assess the environmental impact of the different technologies that we use in order to better manage our water resources. So the environmental aspects is also very important. So again, it's not only about developing standards in order to let the technology work. So standards for interoperability, for security, for safety, it's not only about that. It's also about developing the proper standards in order to properly measure and quantify the potential negative environmental impact that these technologies bring to the table, and how we can mitigate these environmental aspects by deploying proper strategies, by increasing the efficiency, by adopting energy savings scenarios in our work. There's no need for example, artificial intelligence of course is a very promising technique in order to automatically predict the use of the water resources and automate our processes, etc. But we are forgetting a very important point related to artificial intelligence. AI depends on, for example, if we took one class of AI techniques, that's neural network, you need a humongous amount of data in order to train your neural networks. And this means larger servers, which means a higher electricity bill. So there's this particular balance that you need to understand in order to understand and analyze in order to develop the proper standards to solve the existing problems that we are currently facing. So now comes the potential solutions. I've been engaged with the standardization for more than a decade now, and I'll share with you some of the efforts that we have done specifically in the ITU. And in that sense, what is the ITU for those, of course, of you who are new to the world of standardization? So standardization can be classified into several categories or several classes. We have international standards development organization, we have regional standards development organization, and we have national standards development organization. The ITU is considered one of the key international SDOs very active in the standardization domain. We have the ITU, we have the ISO, we have the IEC. Of course, we have also, we call these bodies de jure standards bodies. We have also de facto standards body like the IEEE, like other very notable industry specifications and groups, fora and consortia active in a particular domain. So the ITU is the United Nations specialized agency responsible for ICTs. It plays a pivotal role as an international SDO. As I said, it's one of the key international SDOs, very active in multiple domains. In the area of smart cities and communities and Internet of Things, smart study group. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Now we can hear you. You are muted. You are muted.
Can you hear me clearly?
Now we can. Yes.
Yeah.
We lost like a couple of minutes.
Yes.
So maybe
Okay.
you could repeat a little bit.
We have established. Okay. Yes, I can see confirmation. Thank you very much. Okay. So as I said, the ITUT study group 20 is the lead study group which develops standards related to all these dimensions. So some of our relevant work items in this particular domain, specifically the domain related to the water management. We have developed a framework for monitoring the water systems for smart fire protection. We have developed a document focusing specifically on use cases of IoT based on smart agriculture. We have established a new focus group on artificial intelligence and Internet of Things for digital agriculture, and a little bit about this would come later in my slides. And in order to further explore the digital agriculture domain, in October 2021, the ITT Study Group 20 established this particular focus group in collaboration with the FAO. So we have a group of 6 key questions divided into 2 working parties. Each question is responsible of developing a set of recommendations. That's the way we call standards, so a set of standards. So for example, Q1 is responsible on tackling aspects related to interoperability and interworking of IoT and smart cities and applications and services. So whenever you are tackling interoperability aspects from, of course, on the angle of the smart water management, that would be, so this particular work would be directed to this particular question. We have a particular question focusing on requirements and capabilities, another on IoT and smart cities architectures, another on data analytics, etc., etc. And now on this particular newly established focus group, as I said, this have been recently established. So this focus group explores the potential of using AI and IoT for data collation, for data handling, for improving modeling from a growing volume of agricultural and geospatial data. It is very important to note that we have partnered with the FAO in order to bring as well the food and the agricultural dimension to our work. We have very good international representation from different regions from all over the world. The focus group is co-chaired by a colleague and friend of mine, Sebastian Bosch from Fraunhofer Institute. We have many vice chairs from different regions, from Argentina, from Korea, from China, from the United States, with good representation from the academia, from the private sector, and from the government as well. We have established a group, several working groups, one working group focusing specifically on glossary and definitions, another on digital agriculture use cases and solutions, a third one on data acquisition and modeling, and a fourth one on the standardization roadmap, trying to identify the potential gap and provide sort of a roadmap for possible standardization aspects. A very important working group on ethical, legal, and regulatory considerations, and finally, collaboration and outreach. We have adopted also an idea of a topic group. So working group, while they focus on horizontal aspects, topic groups focus on some specific agro-related issues or agro-related challenges that would be expected, that is expected to be cross-cutting between several working groups. So we have established a specific topic group on geo-reference data management, another on irrigation strategy and smart water management, which I think very, very relevant to the work of the NAIADES project. Very, very relevant to this to this particular work. And again, a topic group is our way of bringing sort of a relationship between different working groups. So a topic group is focusing on a particular challenge facing the agro industry. A working group, on the other hand, is sort of focusing on the digital agriculture, the digital architecture and the architecture of the problem, for example, starting from the use case to the acquisition and modeling to the roadmap to the ethical dimension. And also relevant to our discussion here, quite an older focus group that concluded its activities in March 2015, a focus group on smart water management, which I was honored to chair, also as well in collaboration with an excellent team from different organizations as well. And some of the completed deliverables related to smart water management, we have developed a report on the role of ICT in water management. Another one also done with other organizations related to smart water management stakeholders map, smart water management project classification, stakeholder challenges and mitigation, and most importantly, key performance indicators to assess the impact of the use of ICT in smart water management. And of course, this particular work has been used in our standardization context within study group 20 as well. There's also a very important dimension. I told you earlier about the critical work related to environmental impact and of the technologies that we use in order to enhance our life and to increase our urban efficiency and urban operation. This is a very important report that we have been working on. I'm currently leading the drafting of this particular technical report, which is on the guidelines on the environmental efficiency of 5G usage in smart water management. And this is part of the bigger activities currently handled by the focus group in environmental efficiency for artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies, the FG AI for EE. So again, this work is expected to be completed by November 2022, and we have announced a call for contributions. The first draft is currently available, and in this particular document or this particular work, we are very much interested in trying to quantify the impact of AI and IoT and other technologies like 5G on the environmental impact, specifically when it comes to their use in smart water management applications for three types of use cases: agricultural and urban, utilities, and industrial as well. So again, this is one potential vehicle for cooperation between the NAIADES project and the ITU different focus groups. Another work or another initiative we have been also active in the ITU, that's the UN for SSC, the United for Smart and Sustainable Cities initiative, which was established in 2016. So this initiative is coordinated by the ITU, the UNECE, and the UN Habitat, and it is supported by 14 other United Nations agencies and UN agencies and programs. And since its creation, it has been serving as the major platform to advocate for public policy and to encourage for the use of digital technologies in order to facilitate and to encourage the transition to smart and sustainable cities. We have created several thematic groups. So as you can see on the screen, different thematic groups to, for example, develop action plans, technical specifications, case studies, guidelines, and to offer policy guidance for cities for how they can become smarter and more sustainable, while also at the same time accelerating the digital transformation agenda. And the ongoing work on the thematic group on AI in cities will also cover aspects related to the use of AI-based technologies for water management. And this is, of course, a link for a very important work that we have done as well, the Toolkit for digital transformation. So together with several other UN agencies and programs, the ITU launched the Toolkit on digital transformation for people-oriented cities and communities. And this is this effort was to guide cities in the planning and implementing digital solutions to address challenges in different urban sectors. And the toolkit, as I said, you can see the link on the screen. The toolkit encompasses various standards, reports, and other resources that urban stakeholders would benefit from to improve, of course, sustainability, inclusivity, resilience, and responsiveness in their cities and communities. And this, we expect that this would help to advance the city's progress towards achieving the UN SDGs, of course. We have one dedicated module on smart water management that I would like to invite you to check it out. It's a very important, very beneficial. And there's also the issue of smart energy management. As I told you, there's this water energy nexus. And I think it's also very, very beneficial to understand how can we also be energy efficient while at the same time, because as I said, there's this interrelationship between the water, energy, and even the agricultural aspect as well. That would be all from my side, and I would be happy to receive more questions with you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. There is really it's a wide view that we could learn, especially in the focusing on the ITT. That what is even this agriculture part.
I would be happy to receive any questions.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I think that we see that the quite wide area of activities that was launched and then still ongoing in the ITT, then related to smart water management part, even the agriculture also, it's quite related to the water, so it's the subtopics and there. I would like to see the audience if there is any questions to Ramy at the moment. Okay, seems none. Then maybe at the moment we move to the next presentation, and then we will gather more questions during the panel discussions. Our next presenter is the Dr. Alberto Abella. He's a data modeling expert and technological evangelist in FIWARE Foundation. He has a PhD in business and...
Can you hear me? Eunah?
Yes. You cannot hear me? Ramy, I can hear you. Hello? Everybody just put to the chat box if you are hearing me well.
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Okay, then I will continue to introduce the Alberto. He works as a data modeling expert and currently is a responsible person for the Smart Data Models program. Formerly, he worked as a senior manager for the business lines of the data governance, open data, and smart cities. And then he is also founder and board member of the Spanish chapter of Open Knowledge Foundation and Iniciativa Barcelona Open Data. Since 2020, he is involved in Agile Standardization of the water data models. Let's welcome the Alberto and then hear his expertise.
Okay, so thank you very much for the introduction. what I'm going to do today is just to go to the basics regarding standardization, because the point of everything we do in life is to have some kind of result, some kind of impact. And in order to do that, I want to review what is another approach to standardization, which is the Agile Standardization, and to present an initiative, which is the Smart Data Models Program. So this is the agenda for today, in which we will review why do we have to standardize and what is the role of played by Agile Standardization, and then just a minor introduction of the Smart Data Models Program. So putting Agile Standardization in practice and what is the current status, and as long as it's a collaborative initiative, how to participate in it. So the first thing regarding standardization, we have three main elements. It's a process, so it's well defined, it's well documented. It has to reach some kind of consensus between the different agents. Okay, so unfortunately today it requires large amounts of time. When I mean large amount of time, it's not precisely the work that is required to be done, but to reaching that consensus could be long period compared with digital markets. And all this for reaching a technical definition, which is a technical document, not only defining the technical aspect, but also some kind of literature explaining what's the standard about. The point is, let me go. Yeah, sorry. Okay, the point is that we are not living in the same area like 20 years ago, when digital markets was something which was emerging. Now, water sector is definitely involved into the digital markets. And the point is that the process for creating these standards sometimes is creating standards which are not actually open. So you cannot adapt. This is the standard, you take it, you pay it, and that's all. The consensus, yes, is something which is valuable, of course. I'm not discussing that, but the point is that the time that you spend for reaching the consensus, the digital market is evolving, and the main agents is doing things without a standard. So maybe from time to time, when you have the consensus, the market has been lost because everybody has done something, and then yes, you have a standard, but there is nothing to standardize because everything is doing something different. And the technical definition, sometimes, from time to time, it's reached, but then when you go to the market with this standard, you realize, oh, this that in the paper or in the text was nice. When we go to the market, it has several problems, and we have to create a new version, which takes time and so on. So this leads us to some scenarios that you will be quite familiar with. The first scenario is the jungle. I mentioned this is an invented name for me. The jungle is that, in fact, there is no standards. Everybody do whatever they want, and there is no possibility of interoperability between different water data sources, or as we have identified today, it's hard to say that we are creating a water standardization, because every water project has energy concerns, environmental concerns, censoring concerns, and several other things. So it's no longer just a pure water. You need everything into a pack. Of course, there are another scenario, which is the competing, in which there are several standards in the market. Usually they are not open license, and usually they are generated by the incumbents, so the main players of the market. And eventually could be not complete with all the technical details, because this is part of the knowledge of these incumbent agents. Okay. And of course, this leads, either the jungle or the competing is leading to underdeveloped markets in which we are struggling to connect data from one silo to another silo. The good one will be an adopter standard. So there is one winning standard. Unfortunately, having one single standard is not the guarantee that it's open, and therefore it means that it could give a market to the leader, so which is the owner of the standard. You cannot get out because everybody has adopted the standard. So fortunately, from time to time, some of the main players are releasing these standards as open and also. And there's a specific scenario which is frequent in the water sector, which is the public regulation. So there is a public regulation, it's mandatory, you have to adopt it because otherwise you will be punished, you will be fined. But it's rather frequent that is not providing the last details of the standard because it's something which is tough. Definitely. And the point is that if we have different administrations in different areas or in different countries, what we find out is that something which is mandatory is incompatible between each other. So the public regulation could be a good one, but the actual implementation used to lead us to something which is quite close to the competing scenario. So, and now I want to introduce the Agile standardization, which is a standardization that instead of reaching a large consensus is based on being driven by use cases. So whenever there is a use case, something could be launched. So the consensus is limited, but it can be very, very, very quick. I will see in the next slide. And of course, as driven by use cases, we need an Agile version. When I mean Agile is as long as it's not backward incompatible to have versions. Why don't in a month, in 2 months? Why not? Okay. Of course, reaching all the literature associated in the standard is not possible in that short period. But it's not the full descriptive documentation, but it's enough. And the idea of Agile standardization is that is complementary to classical standardization, not an alternative. So when we adopt Agile standardization, we can meet market speed. This is very relevant because you are not losing the market, because the market is going to move independently of whoever is doing. Okay, and eventually, if we launch a R+D project and we are creating something, some new features or some new processes for the water management, we can create a standard in execution time of the project. Of course, this timeliness can provide an immediate standardization based on the first use cases. We are not, let's say, waiting for, oh, what will going to happen? Because the digital market is not waiting for anybody. Of course, as long as we are being driven by use cases, we have examples. And whenever we have examples, and this is something that I share with you, the amount of discussions is reduced dramatically. When there is an actual use case, oh, this is this way, this is working. This is the discussion. And there is also adoption. So sometimes there are Agile standardization phases with something which is already on the market and adopted. So there is no way or no reason for not adopting something as long as it's open and we can share with the others. And of course, in an Agile standardization, we should provide the technical definition, limited but complete, some examples, exports to other formats, we have shorter discussions, and the documentation translated into several languages in order to be quickly adopted. So, and this is the usual scenario. So what you have in the left is that research project and that emerging markets can, in a matter of weeks, create kind of a Agile standardization. And in a matter of days, this could be in the market. So, and anybody could be adopted as long as it's open. Of course, this could be also a valuable input for regular standardization bodies, but they take usually months or years in order to produce the standards. And of course, once this is produced, could take another period in order to go adapted by the market. So in the case of a standardization, there are several levels of standardization at the API, the mechanism to retrieve the data, and at the semantics of the data model, so what's inside the payloads that we interchange with this API. Okay, and this Agile standardization is especially suitable for digital economy. And now let's see what we are providing under the Smart Data Models program. So first thing, you see the 4 organizations, which are the members of the board of the program. and together with another 73 organizations which has been contributing to data models into this program. It's collaborative, so anybody can contribute as long as they have an actual use case. It's multi-sector, so it's not only for water, but for other sectors, which is something quite natural for water projects, because as I've mentioned before, there are energy concerns, environmental, censoring, and so on. Is Agile standardized, and everything that we do at the Smart Data Programs Smart Data Models program is free and is open license. Therefore, you are allowed to use whatever you want, to modify and to share the modifications. And it's always based on actual use cases or on adopted open standards. So what do we provide? We provide the Smart Data Models serialization of the data models, not only the definition, but also some examples. We provide the data types for the attribute. Here, on the contrary to some other approaches, whenever we define an attribute, we try to say, oh, if this is a string, this is a string. If this is an object, this is an object. This is a number, this is a number. And not having an attribute like temperature that could be either a string for some use cases, either a number, either an object. No way. If we have an attribute to the maximum extent, because we are not, let's say, restrictive, to the maximum extent is one single type for all the data models across the program. And we also provide automatic translation into 6 languages. So English, which is the official one, and several others. We'll see. So how can you reach this? You can reach this as smartdatamodels.org. Okay, this is the main site. This is let's say for the community. You have the updates, so everything what's going on. You can see there the links to the 12 domains that we are running currently. So smart cities, agri-food, smart water, energy, environment, robotics, sensoring, cross-sector, aeronautics, destinations, smart health, and manufacturing. And you see that there are 2 additional repositories, which are the incubated and the harmonization. The incubated is the repository where people is starting to draft their data models out of their examples. Everything that we have is open at GitHub. So there is 55 repositories for the different groups of data models. And you can reach everything there, all the documentation, all the examples, everything. So the structure of the repository is that you can reach there, smartdatamodels.github.com. The data models are grouped in subjects. For water, if I'm not wrong, there are 6 subjects belonging to this domain. Each data model is in a folder, and in this folder you have the specifications, the examples, the exports, the list of adopters of this data model, and so on. And there is an incubator repository for those data models which are in the definition. We have also a specification describing every attribute that we have defined into our data model. And this is very good because this is generated automatically out of the single source of truth. So we have a technical specification. You can see there the languages available, which is besides English is French, German, Spanish, Italian, and Japanese. And there is also a version of the specification compatible with OpenAPI 3.0. Okay, and everything is into the repository. And we have also examples. You can see there some of them which are exports in CSV. There are also in GeoJSON features and others in DTDL, which is a standard for digital twins. And we are exploring RDF and SQL as well. So as long as there is a user, for us is something that we have to do. And last but not least, one of the main differential factors is that we have a single source of truth. What do we mean by single source of truth? So that everything that is described in the standard is in a one file, which is a JSON schema, which is containing not only the technical validation, but also the descriptions. So the descriptions are in the very same document. So whenever there is a change in this document, we launch a process, and every export, every specification, every model, everything is updated. And therefore, there is no inconsistencies, which is something rather frequent when you have descriptive document and a technical payload. Now, sometimes the payload is not compliant with the technical description. Or this is also frequent that the technical description is not precise enough, and then there are many different payloads incompatible between themselves that they are compliant with the same regulation, which by the end is like having the silos even within a standard, which is exactly the opposite of what is the standardization for, is in order to enable and to make easy the interchange of data between ourselves or with other external organizations. So you can see there, we have several services. You can search for data models. You can search for any attribute, any definition that we have into the program. You have some tools for drafting a data model, and you can get examples. Even there is a service for generating examples compliant with the data model. So in order to let's say, to test or to understand with actual data. And these are the subjects that we have. There is 35 data models is only for water. So for open channel management, which is the provisioning of water by open channels, for managing of wastewater, okay, for all the physical infrastructure and the treatment, for water consumption. Okay. There are some other subjects quite interesting for the connection with EPANET. EPANET, you know, there is a software for the modeling of water distribution networks, and with these data models, you can have the classes or the entities that is composing this, and not only this, but also the simulation results and the simulation condition before running the simulation. And of course, we have a subject for water quality, and we are incubated. We'll have some data models soon about water distribution. But I've insisted that whenever you have a project, it's hard that you only are treating with water. So weather possibly will be very important for you. Eventually, we have projects in which social media and the discussions regarding water are also considered, or the type of risk that can affect the management of water. And of course, for the management of water, it's important to have a satellite imagery. And of course, there is a device subject, which is for the sensoring on every water-related infrastructure. And I have to mention this last subject, which is the Open Connectivity Foundation, which is a foundation for the creation of sensors, any type of sensors, including some water sensors. So there are some in the more 130 data models there. There are some for the water domain. So this is the current split of data models. I've put in bold some of the subjects which are related with water, of course, the smart water. Yeah, but cross-sector, like weather, the weather is in the cross-sector because it's applicable to many domains. So you have also the smart sensoring, or the smart environment, okay? So these are the subjects. We have 793 data models, but we have 95 on the queue. So, and unfortunately, this queue, as long as we have more data models, we have more on the queue as well. So, because fortunately, we are having lots of let's say, people trying to or submitting their data models to get accepted. Okay, and there you can see there are some incubated. I don't want to get into the very detail. And this is the community around the Smart Data Models program. There is our 114 active contributors. They have contributed across 224 data models. There are 22 services for the data creators and the data model creators and data model users. These contributors belong to 73 different organizations, and there are more than 18,000 terms available for being searched. And they adopted because since 2021, we are documenting who is using on a voluntary basis, who is using these different data models. And we have 108 data models. Okay. And the last point that I want to mention is how to participate. I've insisted that this is a collaborative approach based on actual use cases. So there is a contribution manual and a learning zone, how to do it. The only mandatory thing is that we ask to sign a form regarding the contribution that you do. Why is that? Because if we are going to release with an open license, we need the agreement of the authors of the different data models. Okay. We have open sessions available for booking. So if you are willing to create a data model, you can go to this link, which is also on the front page, and book a session of half an hour in order to know, oh, I want to create this data model because I have this use case. How can we do it? Well, will be the first steps. Or maybe you have already started into incubator repository. Oh, I have this doubt. What we should do. There is also a green button for announcing that you are creating new data models, because this way you can collaborate with others that maybe is interesting on the description of this data model during the creation phase. But this creation phase used to be short. And there is also a Slack channel, Smart Data Models Slack, several other support opportunities. And just the last frequent asked question that I haven't mentioned. So everything is for free. Okay. Where are these data models coming from? From real case scenarios or mapping of adopted open standards. As long as I'm member of the FIWARE Foundation, do you have to use FIWARE? No, not at all. They are compatible with FIWARE platform, but you can. It's just a JSON. It's JSON basically. So whenever you are using JSON, and of course there are exports in CSV, DTL. So we are not absolutely independent of that. And if anybody, any organization is willing to be part of the steering board, what we need is a memorandum of understanding that you accept the principles and what kind of collaboration could be set. And last thing is that you can see here the challenge to contact with us. I'm open to your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think it is really too nice to hear that it's the new phenomenon to make a standardization. Actually, that we are, most of us are involved in the European project, and due to this the lengthy period and effort and membership problem of the standard bodies, it is quite hard to contribute our result into the standard body directly during the project lifetimes. And I think this is the really perfect. It's a new concept of the Agile standardization, so that it's all open license, and everybody can contribute and then develop, co-creating the standardization. I think this is a really perfect cases. Is there any questions from the audience at the moment? Okay, I do not see that from the chat room, and I do not see the raised hand. But I guess we can discuss the further about this during the panel discussion. So thank you, Albert. And at the moment, I will introduce Dr. Philippe Cousin. He's a CEO of the EG Global Market, EGM. He has 40 years of the rich and diverse professional experience in ICT, including many years in R&D at top management level of the private companies, and few years with the board broad insights into information communication technology at the European policy making level. He worked in standardization for long times, including when he was a PO at EC and 9 years at SG Secretariat. He leads standardization activities in many EU projects and currently lead the work package on policies and standardization within the H2020 Aqua3S project. Let's welcome Philippe, and then,
yes, hello.
The floor is yours.
Yes, good morning, everybody. So thanks to have invited me. Do you see my screen?
Yes, very well.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll make the link between digital related standardization and physical related standardization. First, because at IGM, we are also very well involved in FIWARE and NGSILD. So we have Frank from EGN, is vice chairman of ETSI SIM, and we were also in FIWARE, so we know very well. And we are also promoting within Aqua3S and within also other projects standardization, in particular with this NGSILD. But today I was asked to provide another let's say topic or another angle of standardization, which is a physical related standardization, which is more related to standards that will come to SEN, in order to give also another let's say aspect of the standardization more for the physical, and we see there is a link between physical related standardization and digital related standardization. So I will talk about what we do in this Aqua3S, which is a lot dealing with activity related to water security and also in view of preparing crisis management. But you can guess if data come to a crisis management agency and to alert on something, I think the data need to be accurate, and this is very important to have also a very well, let's say, a good standard for the data, which is quite important. But talking about water security, I will have a few slides just to also give some information, flavors about what is water security and why we need also to have standard and what kind of standard we need, and how these standards are also related to policy, because there's a lot of policy that also are addressed by water security. So we can guess also, looking at the pictures, that there is a broad range of different issue on water security. Can be obviously disease, and talking about drinkable water directive. So it's very important to have also water quality important, but also water security to prevent flood and to also prevent leakage, pollution, and also sometimes we have drought and water scarcity. So it's quite important to address all that. If we look at the UN definition, we see that water security is defined. So you can read the definition, but the conclusion of that is, unfortunately, the complexity of the regulation and the standardization, there is no a single, let's say, case or single context where there is this encompass all the definition of water security. So we have from the beginning a kind of challenge to try to accommodate the different let's say aspect of water security. So that's the reason why I think we have to address this challenge, and we see on that. So what are the different directives? Because directives also are linked to standards, so it is quite important to see that there are different directives. This make also the life of contributing to standard quite complex, because on the one hand, obviously, we have the quality of water, which is very important. So we have the drinking water directive and also different aspect of that, but also we have the flood directive. We have also the directive of European critical infrastructures, groundwater directive, on also preserving ecosystem and environment. So in these four big aspect of water-related directive, you see that several directives, and each of the directive obviously is calling for standard, because it's a new approach directive. So the standardization is very important, and then they are looking for standard to support implementation of the directive.
Hi, Philippe. Sorry for interrupting you. The slide is not moving, so we are just seeing the first page at the moment.
Okay, that sometimes there is a bug, I don't know, in Teams, so sorry for me. So okay, so do you see now? Maybe we need to go for this way in order to be short. Okay.
Right. So that we didn't see that the slide moving while you.
Okay. Sorry. So I will try to recap. Okay. So you see you see now the definition of UN. So we have a definition on what is water security, and you can read the definition: capacity of population to safeguard system access to adequate quantity, and so on. But we see that big issue today. There is no a single framework or single EU regulation that also encompass all the definitions. So the reason why we have this problem. When we see also, you see the slide now? Moving?
Yes, now it's moving. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, but we go this way. Maybe it's not elegant, but okay. So we see that different directives. So we have four big environment. Why we need also water-related standard for supporting directive. We have the quality of water. So in quality of water, we have the drinking water directive and amendment. in the flood, drought, and natural water-related disasters, we have also directives like the flood directive, the European critical infrastructure, very important, the groundwater directive. In preserving ecosystem environment, we have also directives that are addressing that, and also protection against accidental and malicious threat. Also, we have the directive on security of network and information system, and again, the European of critical infrastructure. So we have a list of directives that all are requiring to be supported by standard, and that also makes some kind of difficulty when we look at standard. Also, each directive have different targets. So we have and different targets and different type of stakeholder. So we have, for instance, the water supply and distribution network stakeholders, where they are also obviously concerned about a range of directives, including the drinking water directive, but not only, also the resilient critical entities. But also we have human health and safety regulation, which is also looking at obviously the health of population for the drinking water directive or the flood directive and others. We have also the water bodies like river, groundwater, etc., that also are addressed by the directive, and we have also the environment context, the different target on environment, where we have also the nitrate directive, for instance, or environmental quality standard directive. So all this slide is just to tell you about the complexity on the environment when we are looking at standard. And then we have also then the different stakeholders and forces, and so we are working a lot when working with Aqua3S on this security forces and first responders, because it's very important, because it is crisis management. But then water utility have also to obviously to do this water safety plan in order to be prepared in case of problem. The local municipality and authority have also obviously a very big role to play also in looking at the implementation of the directive and to have the right standards. Environmental agency, also healthcare operator. So you see already several directives, several targets, several regulations that come to some complexity about how to coordinate and how to have even standards that fit all the challenges. And then we see how we coordinate over the different entities. And also this is also a challenge to do that. To get a first feedback on, so sorry, the text is a bit long, but to get a first feedback about what are the issues, we launched a survey about the legal framework regarding water security, and we check and we got the feedback that obviously it's complex. So the concept is appear a bit too wide, so the people want to also to at least to address several parts of the issue, and there are some difficulty to because there is not a complete overview or even a standard. They want to address water security as a whole. What is very important also that, because we come to a slide more precisely on standard, there is a need for guidance. So you will see later that there are a set of standards that used to be a bit high level. So there is sometimes a different opinion between to keep high-level standard and a lot of stakeholders that need a lot of guidance. So about what to do, and with these two big tracks that will come later about how to deal with a new technology and innovation, and also how to get some level of detail. So it's a trade-off between no details and too much detail, but this is also a very important aspect on that. So in terms of now so it was to set the scene about the complexity of standard, not in terms of what we do or what we do and what we did in Aqua3S. Obviously, we work a lot with SEN committees. So we have basically established liaison with 3 SEN committees, the 164, the 230, and the 391. We come later about the details, and we have already identified 4 standards, very important, and we work on that. For the digital standards, we promote what was said before, so we are completely in the loop. So for the digital standard, Aqua3S is implementing a FIWARE and NGSILD and brokers and so on. So we are completely aligned. But for the physical related standard, we work on that, and we have in terms of action, we do several market so some webinars and workshop with stakeholders in order to get, so we have some bottom-up action with webinars, and also we have top-down where we go directly to the committee and we try to contribute, and also we are looking maybe to do a paper on standardization. On the right hand side, you see exactly what I will illustrate later. A standard which is a guideline for risk crisis management, for instance, the EN 15975, which is very high level, and this is supposed to guide how to do a water security plan. But it seems that there is a lot of, let's say, market stakeholders that believe, and in particular the small players, that means the small water utility or the some country which are not well, let's say, acquainted with what is water security plan. There is a need for more details. So the European Reference Network for Critical Infrastructure Protection, the European EURECAT, provide a detailed guideline. So you see on the right-hand side the guideline on that. So you see two completely opposite version of what should be done in terms of standard. And one, it is actually the one, it is very high level, and also the need for more guidance, and it is quite important. So we did a workshop, for instance, on standardization need for water security, where we invite and we work with the Water Europe organization, and that was also helpful to identify the issue. So basically, the lesson that we learned from that, it's we have two big issues we need to address. The one issue is plenty of standards are still very high level, and we have. So we need to contribute to give the details to the standards, and we have just to discuss with the stakeholders what level of detail. So because there are different opinions, I think the big players. So I say evil in the details. That means sometimes no details might create some complexity, and you can imagine if a data should be sent for an alert, for instance, on water security or whatever, I think we need to trust this information, and we need to have everybody also. So we need to have using the same rule. So we have, for instance, the EN 15975. So it is supported by the SEN Committee 164. And this is very high level. Also, with the committee TC 391, there is also the standard 17091, which is also very high level. So, in these two standards, we are trying to open discussion to provide some more level of details in order to help the market to implement a coherent and consistent and equivalent, let's say, approach all over Europe. The second big trend, and where we are also trying to contribute, is the gap. It was also mentioned before. I think the time scale and the speed between the long process of standardization and the quick development of innovation. So when we have new innovation, I think some standards which are, for instance, mentioning how to measure some parameters. So basically, we have a standard supported by the committee 230 on 17075, which is how we are sure that a device is doing the job. So it is a general requirement and performance test procedure for a device. But the standard, obviously, it takes quite a long process to come to this standard. So they are not maybe taking into account the innovation and the state of the art. So for instance, if there is a device measuring nitrate, for instance, or ammonia, it's using the traditional thing. And then in Aqua3S, for instance, we are developing advanced sensor based on the innovation, both hardware and software. And then obviously we need to that this standard take into account the innovation in order to ensure the trustability. So we are contributing to this committee in order to be sure that the standard, which is still high-level details, is taking into account enough new technology, which is a challenge. And also, we are working, for instance, with the ISO 16489 in order to continue to work about how we are considering that a sensor that a traditional or the standard on the sensor on the market that delivering a result, we check that the result can be trustable and equivalent to a new sensor with a new technology. So there is a standard to provide the guidance for that, and we are also discussing to challenging the different methods that are proposing the equivalent of results. So in all this for 4 standards and 3 committee, and even 4 with the ISO, we are contributing to this group. So that's it for me to present what we do in physical related standard for water in the water domain. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the nice presentation. I think it's really the perfect combination now. The Philippe give us some insights, you know, in terms of the regulations, so that the EU directives, and then how it is connected to the SEN level of the high-level standardization on the water sector. I think now I will invite all speakers to turn on their cameras, and that we have a discussion together. Great. I do not see that any questions yet from the audience. So maybe while the audience can think of their questions, maybe I start to question. I think that, you know, that nowadays we really, you know, that we talk about interoperability from the 1980s. I remember that when I studied, then we talked about interoperability, but the scale of interoperability is changing, you know, by this day, you know, long times, and particularly when we now implement these solutions into the real world, and then especially like a smart water, that you are implementing the new technology into the aged utility data, and we need to bring it to digital world, you know, and then we have challenges, and also sometimes there's hesitation to apply things. I think that we have a perfect members here. Aitor has the wide, you know, landscape of the smart water sector of the standardization. We have Ramy here, you know, can talk about the scope of the international standard bodies point of view, how it goes. It's like as a traditional standard bodies. And Alberto, we just heard about the Agile standardization, that how we, you know, when this, you know, the technologies and the real world implementation moves very quickly, how we could apply those things as a standard. So that's the Alberto can talk. And then Philippe here, of course, especially when we talk about this, you know, water or energy, this kind of utility part, the regulation is really highly related to our implementation. So, and then this SEN level, the national level of the standard bodies, what's their point of view, and then what they are doing. So I think that I would like to hear each of you that at the moment, what do you think is the biggest challenges in water sector of standardization? You just can talk about your own area, so that what could be the biggest challenges to actually apply to the real world. Maybe we start from, we just make the same order. So we hear from the Aitor, Ramy, Alberto, and Philippe.
Okay, well, from my side, I will get the words of Alberto. That is most used by him, because I work with him a lot of times. I think that the big challenge, as Alberto says in the presentation, is just to adopt these standards to be user or industry-driven standards in terms of data exchange. And also from my perspective, and also it's a long talk we have been with Alberto and also Philippe during several meetings, is just how to homogenize all or give meaning to the information in a common way, because we have is the part of ontology, semantic interpretability. We have it, the standards that Philippe leaded, also with compatibility with FIWARE, that is saying yes ILD, and all this big work done in that sense. And now the work is how to convey in the water sector with all of this, and how we can complement each other just to make this information and more system be compatible between each other.
Thanks, Aitor, to share your thought. Maybe that you mentioned of that this, basically you work with Alberto, and this maybe we can hear a bit more details in terms of from him about this data model point of view, and then thanks for giving this a broader level of the view. Ramy?
All right, thank you. An interesting question, and maybe a very good opportunity to try and trigger some thoughts here and there. So basically, in light of what is the major obstacle or the key challenge, right? I would
to implement in the real world.
I understand. To be practical, because it seems that yes, technical experts may sit together in standards setup, and that could take quite some time. And at the same time, farmers are out there struggling, looking for some potential farmers, or for example, it depends on the use case, of course, on the way you're using water. The users are struggling to find a proper solution. I would say one of the biggest challenges facing the industry is first the problem of looking for sustainable, viable products. So this is one potential challenge that we all have to face. The other challenge is the issue of interoperability between the different standards out there, between the different layers of standardization. We have now seen, for example, FIWARE is doing an excellent job, very good initiatives within that particular group. Another work equally important is being done at the SEN level. Other SEN, and of course, its interrelationship with the ISO and the ETSI and the things that are being done at the European level. And then we have this particular standardization at an international level, whether that is at the ISO level, at the IEC, or at the ITU. So the problem is, how can we provide to the end customer a final good recipe where at the end of the day, no one really cares whether this is done by the ITU, by SEN, by SENELEC, by ISO, by ETSI. The average user doesn't understand that, and he doesn't care. What he cares, that he wants a solution that is working, that is interoperable. Of course, he doesn't even care about interoperability. Unless, of course, we made it very clear that without interoperability, you might end up paying more money for the period of your project, because you might end up with a vendor lockup situation. So in that sense, if you want to, for example, to change or to replace one part of your solution, you will not be able to do that unless you go to the same vendor. And accordingly, it could be a little bit complicated, a little bit expensive. That vendor could change his prices, could change his technology, could enforce you to do some things that you weren't planning. Not necessarily this is a bad, but the total cost of ownership, TCO, total TCO management of your project. So I would say that we need to find ways of interworking with each other, where it's like a big puzzle. So now at the ITU, we're doing some things. At the ISO, they are doing other complementary things. It has to be complementary. At the same level, exactly, it has to be complementary. There is this particular relationship between the EU member states and SEN, you know, that, of course, I will leave that to probably Philippe or Alberto to explain that. But I know that there's this particular regulatory and legal mandate to adopt particular standards in a particular way. So in a nutshell, I think it's about interoperability and collaboration between other SDOs. I want also to bring another dimension to the discussion. Why am I bringing my products to standardization? Why am I standardizing my products and services? Am I doing that to disseminate the knowledge or the technology without any potential licensing returns? So am I, for example, adopting open source initiatives, open standards? Where would I sustain myself? What is the business model? Other players could actually be working with a different angle. They could be developing research projects or developing projects, huge expenses associated with R&D. They protect these investments by means of IPs and patents. So they go to the patenting stream and then to the standardization stream. And hence, we need to have a discussion on the essential, the standards essential patents, the SAPs. So this is just to trigger the discussion. I don't want to capitalize the microphone for too long, but let me stop here and give the floor to you, I mean, my dear colleagues, and let us have an engaged discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Ramy. I think this is a very good point that we have a lot of standard bodies, and when we want to implement something, we even do not know where we should look at first, and then which one we should bring it to implement our solutions and so on. Although everybody talk about you should take a standard to make it into portable solutions and so on. I think that's a very good point. Yes, I think, and then also the other points, I think it naturally lead to the Alberto that yes, now this also he mentioned about the patents, so that the big companies make their own solution and bring to the standard body, and then they move it to make a standards, and then eventually this is the not real standard, and then now we are working on Agile standard and also open license. So I think we could hear a good insight from you. Alberto. Unfortunately, I cannot hear you. Is it only me who cannot hear him?
I think you're
now.
muted.
Alberto.
You are muted, Alberto. We cannot hear you.
I do not know. What's Alberto is not muted.
We cannot hear you.
No, he's not muted.
It's a microphone.
Microphone problem, maybe. I cannot hear you, but I think we cannot hear. Somebody put the chat box, check the input set in Teams. So maybe while Alberto, you check the audio interface that what you are now using. Maybe we hear the opinions from the Philippe in the meantime.
Yes. Okay. So yeah. So I'm in different domains. So but are complementary about the physical world. You can have a so nice organization of data on the digital world, but if the quality of the data you get are bad, you cannot do the job. So we need to be sure on the lower level that you got also the information and which are also supported by the proper standard. So then we enter into the SEN, the different way of standard are done in SEN as compared, for instance, to ETSI. To ETSI, you have, for instance, the industry-specific group where like SIM, for instance, and GSILD was done by SIM. In SEN, you have also another mechanism which is the same. It's called the SEN Workshop Agreement, but it's not very clear. Sometimes we were also looking at speeding up the standardization, because one issue is the timing between what we want to do and the time, in particular when you have SEN, because it's done by the national mirror organization. And so, for instance, now we have, although we have a liaison with the SEN group, when we want to enter into more details, we were asked to go through the national organization, and that also add another layer of complexity. So the one big issue is this is the timing process and the lengthy process in particular in the same organization. The second also is like the same in all organization, because I worked 9 years in ETSI, so I know also the issue is the representation of the small stakeholders. That means that you have sometimes a different opinion between big players, because basically the ones that are going to standardization body and to influence standardization body are quite a big players, and always an issue in SEN on ETSI or SME can raise a voice. The voice of SME into standardization is very complex. So in our case, for instance, we see that we have a high-level standard, for instance, to do things where the big players are very happy on that because they know how to do, because they have the inside expertise, and even they can sell the expertise to small players. But some other small players, they want to understand themselves how to do a safety plan, and some other less advanced country want also to start to look at water safety plan. So they want to have the detailed standard. They don't want to have high-level standard. They want to say that okay, you write this line, but what this line mean, how you interpret, because we see that we can have different interpretation when it is too vague. So we have this issue about raising the voice of small players versus high players, and also the level of details, which are very important on standard. That is very important. And then finally, a third point from in my domain where I'm looking is coordination at the level of the policy coordination, because we have, for instance, we have the drinking water directives that's not supposed to look at security, but there is some link in the technology, and when we implement the standard, there is obviously a link. So we see a need for some kind of overall synchronization between regulation in order to simplify the standard and to have standards that can fit for more things. So this is basically the three issues we see in the standardization process.
Thanks, Philippe. I think it's really good to hear from the experts on the level of the SEN, and it's a national level, so they have another steps, I guess, in each nation that should have to bring it, and then also I think that it's really important that how it's make it, the speed, and then when the high level from the big companies and the SMEs, I think that their role is very important. They want to adapt to the existing one instead of the developing by themselves everything, and then to involve in both sides. I think that this is the good point, and then it's quite nice that we are now have experts that who are aware of the challenges in each sector. They are making the effort. Now I think I heard Alberto.
Did you hear me?
Yes.
Oh my God, I haven't done anything special. Okay.
Yeah,
so I have just four tiny things to comment. The first thing, and I've quite aligned. So I guess that regarding standardization, we have too many experts and too few users. So the point is that, of course, I'm not rejecting the expertise, but the point is that anybody who's going to the market, to actual situations, you discover that this standard could be improved. Why don't we go directly to this I'm not rejecting the classical approach because it's also needed, but I don't think that they can live without this input. So because the market is not caring about. So the other point is that to have a closest connection with the solution and to reduce, when possible, the complexity of the standards, because if you have a very complex standard, there will be some agents or that cannot be adopted, or there will be some solution makers that won't be, oh, it doesn't worth the effort to implement all this standard. And then they will do something alternative, and this is the worst thing. So we have alternatives, the official standard, and the simplified version for tackling the problems that the users are actually having. And the another point, which is I have no solution, it's just a concern, is the multi-domain nature of water projects. Now, whenever there is a water project, there is an environmental impact, most of it. Or if there is regarding the relation with the users. And of course, they will have a relation with the sensoring and many other things. So having a water standard by alone, without taking care of the rest of the things, is maybe doing something which is not well connected with the other standards that you need to in order to accomplish the project. I don't know how to solve this because it's a tough issue, but we have to face it. And the access level and the simplification of the standards, I guess it will be a good thing, or just to have, let's say, an introductory level and then an expert level, but that you can adopt the standard whenever it's available. Don't wait or don't do that complex. And of course, there is a rather stupid barrier. Standards cost money. And not only the money, because usually the price is limited, but the things that you can do. So there is a copyright that prevents you to make a derivative or make something that actually adapt to one specific situation. And I guess that is also a shortcoming for this kind of adoption. Basically, these are the points that I want to emphasize.
Thanks, Alberto. I think it's we share all, together. Just we are facing into such a problem that when we build the systems, we want to use the existing standard, and then also the problem now is really the data itself, and then bring the qualified users to the contribute and the co-work, and then also especially this utility side, as you said. There is we have a traditional aged utility side, and then also new platform data, so that we are mixing all the things, and then I think it's quite challenging, but I think we are aware of the challenge and share the opinions. Probably we may be slow, but we can go in the right direction, I hope. I see that the questions in the chat box from the Ali, that he actually right now that about your opinion, that he says that he thinks that it's not the lack of users, but we do have a lot of users, but we still are unable to collect qualified data from users. That's what his opinion. Yeah, I think that the qualified data is also important. And Philippe's mention of physical world, and then we should start from the data, and then how to digitalize such things is all different challenges. And I think there is another question, as it's also from Ali, that he asked, what are the standardization challenges related to regional area, each region, so north of Europe, south of Europe, east, west, proximity of the sea, and so on. But I think it's really we are in the different cities, so we are facing into different pilots, and then I think, Alberto, you have a lot of use cases around there. So maybe if you know, and then also Philippe, you are representing this in the SEN and the national levels, you maybe see different parts. So maybe then also Ramy, I think that from your slide, even you mentioned about the regional groups, Africa, and America, and Middle East, even the Arab, and I think that you are the perfect person to give us the broader regional thing. So maybe we start from the Alberto about this, when you see the contribution from all the use cases, if you see the different region in Europe, like north, south, or approximate C, that if it gives the different things and different requirements, how you apply. And then Philippe, maybe in some levels that also when you discuss about this kind of high level things, and then how much it's applying with the different regional requirements. And then maybe at the end, finally, I would like to listen to Ramy's opinion about the broader one than Europe, so that the Africa, Arab, and America point of view. Maybe Alberto, you start.
Yeah, regarding the users, for us, I don't want to say that it's easy, because it's not easy, but it's our nature. So therefore, if there's no use case, we have no data model. But it is true that whenever we talk with, let's say, new people, they'll tell me, oh, I'm using the data models. But we, as we are releasing with an open source license, we have no means to detect this unless this guy is telling you, oh, I'm adopting and I'm happy, or I want something to be added. I have no way of knowing. So what's the reach? And I guess that is something that is happening also with other standards. So what is the level of adoption of a standard? How can you measure that? So unless you make let's say a qualified survey or something like that, that's impossible. And not knowing what are they using leads you to maybe will we be doing a good job, or we are creating a standard for nobody. So it's kind of uncertainty that is for us, for the Smart Data program, but I guess that any kind of standardization body will have the same concern.
Philippe?
Yes, so it's exactly what I told you about also the different level of advancement between some country and some others. So because obviously you have like in France, we have Suez, which is very dominant, large players in water utility. And well, when we have, for instance, also in Aqua3S, we have Bulgaria. Obviously, Bulgaria, it's not the same level of big players like Suez. So, for instance, typically when we did some workshop, we have this expression of interest and comment for more detail from Bulgaria and this type of country. So you have different country which have different of understanding and different, let's say background information about what is a water security plan. So for instance, you need to do a water safety plan. But if you look at the standard, it's not very helpful to because it's not enough to do exactly what a water safety plan should be. So obviously the big players and some country and the big players sometimes are selling services to tell us a small water utility, let's say in France, how to do that. But when you are in Bulgaria, when you are in another country, if you just want to read the standard and to have the standard to help you, you don't have enough information. So we see the level of the different, let's say, different situation based on the region.
Yes, so still because the Ramy, that maybe you can talk about the wider reasons, Africa and Arab, maybe if these two areas you especially can talk to us. Absolutely. That your experience.
Absolutely. So in terms of standardization and standardization challenges, we really have to say that it depends on the regulations and the type of stakeholders involved in managing or regulating this particular sector. Again, when you're talking about the water industry or the potential water use cases, we have three types of use cases, more or less, three classes. So we have water for agriculture. So in that sense, we would say that the issue of irrigation, the issue of managing water resources for irrigation, the optimization for the irrigation processes, the farming practices, the level of You know, if you are using, for example, groundwater, are you overdrafting the water supplies in the ground? So there are several aspects involved in this particular type of use case. So in terms of regulations, who is responsible for setting the regulations, and is it light regulations or is it very strong regulations? For example, you are not allowed to do this unless you are following this particular standard, or unless you are ratified by this particular standard. So it depends. Is it light regulations or very strong regulations, and who are the stakeholders? If you are talking about the agricultural sector type of, you know, potential use cases, we have usually, depends of course on the naming, the different naming from country to country, but we have these stakeholders who manage the agricultural sector. In Egypt, this is the Ministry of Agriculture. We have the stakeholders who manage the water supply. In a sense, in Egypt, it's called the, for example, the Ministry of Water Resources, etc., etc. And we have the, if you are bringing the dimension of technology on board, then you have the Ministry of ICT and the telecom regulator, etc. So very complex setup, which means that standardization, if you are in a particular region whereby the regulations are very heavy, very stipulated, I think Alberto mentioned that it's complex. The water industry itself is complex. Many players working with each other, and for example, whenever it comes the notion of water, then you have environmental aspects, you have energy consumption and energy related aspects, you have the food aspects, etc. But anyway, let us return to the point of focus now. So if you are in a heavily regulated market, in that sense, one of the biggest challenges out there that would face that particular region is that if you are developing or you are relying on a high level standard, a standard which didn't tackle so much detail, then you have a problem. Because in that sense, you would be left totally in the dark, totally trying to negotiate the different needs and requirements of multiple stakeholder groups, which might not necessarily, for example, agricultural expert, not necessarily aware or very much aware of the ICT domains, of ICT technologies, ICT standards. So in that sense, this is one potential problem. If you're talking about urban sort of utilities use cases, then you are automatically shifting your focus on leakage detection and how to optimize the way you are distributing your water resources. And accordingly, it would totally shift you toward the angle of using technologies for controlling the pumps, controlling the leakage. You would enter into domains related to SCADA, PLC, which not necessarily be under the jurisdiction of a single governing body in a particular region. It could, because so these, you know, overlapping domains make it a little bit difficult from a standardization point of view. If you are in a region whereby the regulations are voluntarily can be adopted, in that sense, it's a little bit easier because you can simply say that, all right, I'm going to rely on, for example, an open specification. It's slightly regulated. There's no problem as long as you are, of course, making sure that this particular set of key performance indicators is met and is achieved. So to summarize, the biggest challenge in my point of view is related to the nature of the regulations and the interplay between the different stakeholders group and the type of standardization document needed, whether that is, for example, open license or slightly more stringent requirements in terms of Well, no, we need to have a particular standard issued from ETSI, issued from the ITU, from ISO, or from one of these de jure standards body, so that it can be ratified by government, so that it can be included in the national regulations, so that it can be adopted by the market. Otherwise, the companies will not be able to deploy that. So this is the type of discussions that we face on a daily basis. I mean, on a country level or on a regional level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What Philippe, shared this opinion about this in a high level, and then also to implement, how the other stakeholders wanted the details, and then I think Ramy also. The area that has a high regulation, they also need a very specific, standards to just exactly follow things. I think this is basically the same way that they shared opinion. But Ramy, do you, with your experience, and you also sort of the involved in the advisory board of the regulation, and as far as I know that this Egypt. Do you see some differences in when you are in ITU? You hear a lot of European project result, and also Asia, and also Africa. There's many nice delegates from Africa. And also we have I think a big members in Arabic countries. Do you see that they have a different aspects or the view to reflect?
Yes, yes, we do. So in principle, there are two viewpoints. First of all is the requirements point of view. And of course, when you're saying that each particular region or each particular country has a set of requirements, it depends. If I have, for example, a very strong industry, manufacturing, for example, equipment, etc., like the situation in some parts in Europe, some parts in the United States, in China, etc., the angle where you are developing your requirements is focusing on how can you open interfaces, how can you bring interoperability to the game. So this is one potential angle. For these economies who rely on consumer groups, who rely on public needs, public requirements, safety requirements, health requirements, etc. So it is important to channel in these views inside the standardization process early on. So from an Arab and from an African point of view, the way we are developing or deploying potential regulations in the domain of ICT, we usually use the mechanism. We call it mechanism. It's like an instrument, a channeling instrument of the UN body, the UN system, specifically the ITU. Why? Because in a way, we don't have this particular sense-centric approach that is currently being adopted at the EU level. So in the EU, you have sense-centric, and you have, the Paris and the Vienna agreement. I don't want to enter into legal comparisons, but in a sense, you have this particular mandate that standards or specifications developed at a European level should be adopted by each member state in a particular setup, in a particular way, through mechanisms of sen-and-senelic, and accordingly, there's this particular relationship between the ISO and IEC at the international level, then this particular relationship at the sen-and-senelic, and then at the national levels to be adopted. And accordingly, your experts participating from the European region usually participate through the 3 European organizations, standard setting organizations, that's ETSI, sen-and-senelic. And accordingly, it's sort of bottom-up approach where companies, academia, practitioners come, participate, and then there's this interplay between the ISO and IEC and sen-and-senelic. We can see many synergies. In the United States, it's a little bit different. We have, of course, it's an ecosystem in itself. We have the ANSI, and the ANSI is actually ratifying other standard setting organizations in order to set standards at the United States level. And then we have many industry specifications group, many companies participate, and voila, you have an ecosystem in itself. In China, same situation. You have the Chinese standards bodies focusing on a Chinese level, etc., etc. So we in Africa and Egypt, for example, in Egypt, Africa, Arab regions, do things a little bit differently. We use the channel of the ITU. We rely, there is this particular interplay between our national standards body, which are members of ISO. So in that sense, we have this particular interplay, but most of the companies, most of the initiatives related to digital transformation initiatives, etc., of course, I'm part of the ICT community, so it wouldn't be fair to say that. But I'm one of the strongest advocates that sometimes in partnership with, I have to pick my words very wisely, in partnership with the agricultural, for example, and the water management sector, we are leading, sometimes co-leading initiatives related to smart water management. So in that sense, we produce our standards, our ideas, our requirements through the umbrella of the ITU. So back to your question, is this different? Yes, because in that sense, we are bringing our requirements, our African and Arab perspectives to the UN level, to the ISO level, directly, not to Sensenelec, not to ETSI, although we can adopt or we can approve recommendations or specifications set by ETSI in some situations. So obviously ETSI is a well-known, very important standards body. So, but in that sense, that is a huge difference of mentality and huge difference of the way we conduct our standardization business. And this not, so again, if you want to look for requirements related to African and the Arab and these part of the regions, where are you going to factor in these requirements? Where are you going to find it? You're going to find it in specifications or recommendation documents developed at which level? At the ITU level. And that is the important, that is our selling point. So we're saying we're complementing each other. If European companies, for example, wish to extend their footprint in Africa, they need to somehow comply with the requirements, potential needs coming from these regions, which are going to be factored at ITU, ISO, or other venues. On the other hand, if there is an opportunity to collaborate between, for example, I'm not sure, but for ETSI, for example, ETSI could have a potential vehicle whereby invitees from Africa, etc., can be invited, share their opinion, etc., if you want to do that. However, I'm not sure if this could be a sustainable model, because obviously we need someone from ETSI to discuss this. But again, this interplay between regional requirements and regional SDOs versus international SDOs is definitely being done by means of liaison. Is it the best mechanism? I'm not sure. Can we do something more about it? Definitely yes, but let us discuss this in a side discussion.
Yeah, I think that this is the good to know that that sometimes we are only inside of Europe, so whenever we worked it, we look at the edgy side first, and then of course the when it's widely used standard in ISO, IEC, ITU, there is things that of course we look at. I think, but the approach to learn, and then I think it's very important to look at the ITU, ISO standards in terms of the understanding the other regions' challenges and then stuff. Philippe, do you have anything to add in terms of this the Ramy mentioned about this they are this region Arab and also Africa is focusing on ITUT side, and then I think that the sense analytic edgy often they make the common discussion, and then how much do you care to liaison with the ITU and ISO for the international level, or do do you make it only within the European levels? I think he was not in the. Philip, do you hear me? It doesn't seem to. Okay, then I moved.
Yes.
Oh, okay, good.
Yes, okay, yes. Could you repeat the question? Yes, I was on other things.
Sorry. The Ramy mentioned that the African and Arabic countries, when they want to adapt the regulation to the standards, technical standards and things, then they go to ITU and ISO levels. That they have also national bodies, and then they bring it to such a standard bodies. And Europe, I think that we have this sense analytic EDGE, so that basically European regulations and actually go to the EDGE and discussing this level first. And then I would like to know that to adapt as a European, the industries that to understand the other regional requirements, that do you think that the EDGE, in a sense, analytic EDGE level, that also interact with the ITU or ISO level particularly?
Yes, in fact, the groups, there are active national groups which are preparing work for instance, for SEN, but they follow all the ISO group. So I think there is direct the ISO. So the SEN also is liaising with ISO, and there's plenty. For instance, the one I was mentioning you is an ISO standard on intercomparison. So yes, the ISO is in the game the same. So the chairman of group are also used to be sometimes chairman of ISO group, and there is a complete synchronization between ISO standard in water and SEN.
Oh, that's very good to hear. So probably that what we are doing is not just all the off the area, and then we are now in the coordinated way. I think that yes, I see that Aitor that raised his hands. I was about to ask you your opinion. then you can share your opinion. Thank you.
Yeah, well, just complementing Philippe, it's just this. I am also part of this sensor here in Spain in the Smart Water group, and it is as Philippe said, all the national working groups are working on SEN, but also reporting for the ISO standardization body in a coordinated way. So for me, in the Spain group, I know if Philippe have the same feeling in France, is that for here in Spain, it's more focused on more physical standards, on how the way of procedures, the way of infrastructural aspects, rather than digital things or monitoring things. But well, I think that it will be more evolve on that aspect, and also it is also needed for the security aspects too, and data security also to ensuring this not only interoperability but safe use and consumption of data. I apologize, but Ali, it is also with their hands, right? I know if
yes, I see. The Ali put also in the chat box that dear Ramy, we still have a big differences between the Arab countries in water governance, in food production, water distribution, and in water treatment. We are having new challenges in Europe coming from Africa, like desertification or political issues. Also using EU standard in Africa, Arabian countries is not necessarily the right choice. Objectives are not the same. Yes, of course, that's what we so far discussed, I think. We have a common challenges and then different challenges. So we go on, try to adapt all the different needs. I think that's the one thing. And I see that the other one from the Tanya, The great discussion, thanks. The most important thing is to have a good professional like you all, our speakers, who are able to know the technical details of each standardization initiative and its difference in development, application, use, coordinating to avoid the interventing the wheel. Actually, that could be the really the good points that what Tanya mentioned. Maybe the before this could be the new discussion that what Tanya mentioned. So I think that before we move on to this topic what Tanya raised, we maybe hear from the Ali.
Yeah, thank you, and hello everyone. It was really an enrichment, all these discussion, and thank you, and thank you all of us for this, let's say, discussion. I just want to have a point. Several discussion now for 4 to 5 years now discussing the involvement of African and Arabian countries in the on the use of standardization. We shouldn't forget that standardization, ISO, HC, ITU, and so on, both are developed under water research in Europe or North America countries. They are also based on collecting the challenges. What are the challenges in Europe? What are the challenges in North America? And also, they are based on collecting data from all these countries. And the discussion is now, are these research, are these data, are these challenges applicable to African and Arabian countries? Not necessary. We have really very few data coming from Africa. And we are actually trying to use these standards into Africa, into Arabian countries, but are they applicable? This is the question. This is in fact the point I wanted to. Thank you.
Thanks, Ali. Is there anybody who can answer this Ali's question? Okay, Ramy.
Yeah, may I? All right, so I'll be short and brief. Of course, when we say that ISO and IEC and ITU as standards development organization, from where do they factor the requirements on a particular topic? So, and what I'm going to say is equally applicable to any standard setting organization. Usually, standards development organization or standard setting organization depends on the membership, the constituents. Who are the membership? For example, in the ISO, the membership are the national standards bodies of all America. I mean, I don't have the number right now, but majorly all the national standards body of countries are members of the ISO. So in a way, if any particular country or any particular industry wishes to channel in their requirements, they do that by coordinating at the national level through their national standards body. So this is one stream. At the ITU stream, the ITU, and specifically the ITUT, the Telecommunication Standardization Bureau, has different types of membership. So we have academic membership, we have companies, we call them sector members or associates, and we have member states or governments. So so this, in a nutshell, is how standards are being developed by means of membership. And membership brings their membership interests. If they are coming from the industry, then they are going to promote and push for their company interest. It's common sense from the industry. What are the companies interested, or what are they looking for? They are looking for economies of scale, opening up interfaces, interoperability, etc., etc. And sometimes they are looking for other stuff. For example, like penetrating new markets, selling patents, inserting patents through standards, essential patents, SAP inside standards, and accordingly they can charge royalties after that. But I'm not commenting on this particular stream. For governments coming from Africa or from the Arab group or from Latin America or any developing country, they channel in their thoughts, their ideas, their requirements by means of participating in the standard body and providing input. So this is the way we do business. Final point is that every standard body is very much interested in keeping the balance and diversity of its membership. For example, in Study Group 20, we have a very balanced participation. For example, I'm from Egypt. I'm coming from the African and Arab world. We have multiple African members from different countries in Africa sitting as vice chairs. That is one of the highest level of the leadership positions inside this particular study group. I myself, I'm leading a working party, so I'm chairing one of the working party, which under this particular working party, we have many different questions tackling different standardization topics. So we are usually standards body, Mr. Ali, standards body usually are very much wary. They have to look for diversity and they have to look for balance from different regions, that balance from different stakeholders group, because otherwise, if a particular country or a particular industry capitalize this particular standard, then it wouldn't be a standard after all. It would be it wouldn't be a standard that can accommodate all views with different stakeholder views, etc., etc. So I wouldn't worry about the African and the Arab and other regional interests being channeled inside ITU or inside ISO. Of course, it depends on the working group. It depends on who is the leadership, who is contributing, who is leading the discussions. Sometimes we can see some groups are being dominated by other groups, yes. And in that sense, I would say that usually the leadership inside a particular SDO would then try to bridge that gap, try to invite more volunteers to participate in the standards development process of a particular project. Over to you, Eunah.
Thanks, Ramy, to share your opinion. I think that it will be very nice to continue the discussion, but I think because of the time that I will move on the next topic that what Tanya mentioned. I think that's the kind of good points that that we already mentioned. There is so many standards, and then when you do not know the details and the scopes and the specification, that you may not choose the right one, and you end up to the reinventing the wheel. So I think that each of you maybe can give your insight how we could make this the existing standard and its scopes and where it's applicable, and then how we make it's clear, and then deliver this to the wider community who has to use the standard. I think that could be the one things that we could hear your opinion, and then especially in Alberto, this I think that this agile standardization is a particularly it's a really new concept, and it's a very important. So but the thing is that as Ramy says that and Philippe and this Seneleg and ISO, ITU, they have all these national experts, and then going there and then bring the result, and then make up, although it's slow, but you are open to everybody, and then contribute and then evolve in that way, which is very nice. But is there maybe also the way that when there is a existing data models in the smart data model program, how you really trust that's a really the good set of the apply to the good expertise from the diverse view, and then like what traditional standard body is doing. I think that's the also good things, and then and this is a new, so maybe less known to many people. the people, when people want to look at the standard, they go to in Europe as like ETSI and ISO, ITU, IEEE, and so on. But how do you want to make it visible and clear the scope and people can use? Maybe I hear this from the Alberto point of view first, and then each of you maybe give your opinion that how we can make the people aware of the existing standard, then avoid, how, we cannot do everything, avoid, the reinventing the wheel, but what's the best way to avoid such a, useless effort or the in vain effort to the reinventing the wheel. Maybe the Albert first.
Yeah. So what's the idea? The first thing that we do is whenever we receive any kind of contribution is just have to check the database about the terms, because many of the things, so we not only care about what's the new entity or the new class to be standardized, but what's in it. So every attribute that we have there, so why don't you reuse some other attributes? And whenever there is a standard, and you can ask me, oh, how do you detect that there is an existing open standard? So manually. So we don't have a, let's say, yeah, we do a research. And to be honest, it's not that tough. Okay. And the other thing, the only thing that we have to, let's say, to prevent is those people who are designing a standard and they haven't tested. So this is the only moment when we say, oh, do you have an actual payload? Do you have an example? And the answer is no. Then go for it and then come back, because the point is that we are saving time for both of us. Because if they haven't tested in real case a scenario, he's going to change it. If he creates or she creates the version, and then they realize, oh, this is not the good version, I have to change it slightly, they are wasting time. So on that point, and the reinventing the wheel, this is happening all the time. So the good point for us is that we are very short on resources. So we don't want to do anything that is already done there. So please, this is done there, just adopt it. So we cannot afford to create an alternative. So no way. We don't want, and we can't. So in that case, I guess the limitation on resources is kind of an advantage. And the same way, everything that we do regarding documentation is done automatically, including translations. Why is that? Because we don't have resources for maintaining a large community of people translating. And this is something that is some use cases, because we have some concern that possibly is common for all the standards. So usually you are willing to name the different attributes with a local name. So instead of saying temperature, you want to say temperatura in Spanish or in other languages. And the point is that we don't have an actual solution. If we want to be interpretable, now you have to use one single word. We have adopted English, but it is true that as we are based on linked data principle, there should be, it could be an alternative in which, oh, call it this way or this other translation, because by the end, I have kind of a mapping, and I'll understand that this is the very temperature that you are meaning, these kind of things. But this is something that is in progress. And regarding the users, we have any type. And the only point, I'm an academic, I'm a doctor, and there are some people coming to us, oh, you should map this ontology. And the answer, the question is always the same. So where is being adopted? And yeah, no, but this ontology is complete. And no, where is this adopted? And we wait for this answer for this question to be answered.
Yeah, I think it's great that the no alternative one, we only do the what doesn't existing in, and also you check the double check, and then what can be used for the existing one, and then also it should be adapted. I think that's these 3 points. It's a really nice one.
One question, only
yeah.
one minor point. Sometimes what we do is to get an adopted standard and to extend it.
Yes, that's also
because
important.
the adopted standard is not enough for the use cases.
Right.
And what we want to is to feedback this to the standardization organization to say, oh, this is in the market, this is requested, do whatever you want, but it's here. Yes,
I think that's the important. Yes, when the existing standard is not good enough, if you could bring it to the classical standard bodies, that you have to get through all the procedure of course shorter. But I think that's the good things to know. I hear that about the Ramy, you're in the classical standard bodies, and you have you mentioned the ITU, ISO, and they all have the same area. When you just search a smart city or intelligence and the AI and all this part that you see all these major standard bodies, what kind of effort are making to avoid to make several different standard in ITU side?
All right, so basically on this particular issue, of course, having been in the standardization sector for many years now, and I believe also some of my colleagues even spent longer times, I would say any standardization projects always starts with a proper gap analysis, because if you don't have a problem to solve, you have nothing. And as a standard procedure in your gap analysis, you survey any existing projects that have been done in the past, either by your organization itself, because sometimes the experts who are actually proposing new work are not aware. They were not, for example, participating in the standards development activities like in other groups, for example, sometimes in Study Group 20. Study Group 20 in the IDU is dealing with IoT and smart cities. We have some cross-cutting or some relationships with other groups inside the ITUT, like Study Group 5 working on environmental aspects, etc., etc. So sometimes elements have been tackled already elsewhere. So the point is, it is very important to conduct a proper gap analysis. The second point is that you have to establish openness and collaboration relationship with other groups and even with other SDOs. And this is something that at the ITU level and even at the leadership level have been quite fond of. We appreciate partnerships. We like partnership because the more the better, the more views, the better. The more stakeholders involved, this means that, for example, if we partnered with ISO, IEC, IEEE, if we collaborated with any of, for example, a particular de facto specification group, this means that we have wider access to this particular community. And likewise, the other way around, they have access to our membership, which means that if we manage to collaborate, then in a way we are going to avoid any potential future duplications. This is the first point. Second point, it's win-win for everyone. I mean, you would have access to my membership, to my communities, to my backing industries, and vice versa. In terms of some of the recent activities that we have done at the ITU level, we are currently collaborating with ISO and IEC in the Joint Task Force on Smart and Sustainable Cities. So it's an initiative that is currently being coordinated with the advisory boards, very high-level boards of the 3 SDOs. I'm part of this particular group, very active. So we are meeting almost every month with side meetings, planning and organizing, and we have a specific questions and specific issues that we are trying to cover in order to bring synergies between the 3 SDOs in this particular domain, that is in specific smart cities and communities. So this is one potential vehicle, one potential instrument that the 3 SDOs, the 3 large international SDOs have decided, well, smart cities is an important topic. It's a hot topic. How can we coordinate? How can we collaborate with each other? And the vehicle that we have done, or that we have used, is the Joint Task Force. It's a sort of a policy and coordination group whereby we can align our understanding of the problems. What do we mean by smart city? Because sometimes you have different, you can use similar syntactic terminologies like architecture, but what do you mean by an architecture? What is it? How do you describe it? So we bring experts from the ITU, from ISO, from IEC, and we share our ideas and we come up with common understandings, different layers of understanding, etc., etc. So a third potential vehicle, which of course needs to be also adopted and considered by probably by all the participants participating here, is the possibility of doing some joint standards development activities. By joint means that it has to be, of course, arranged, because sometimes you have different business models. For example, all the ITUT related standards are publicly available, free of charge. Some other SDOs, you have to pay for the standards in order to have access to that. So in that sense, difficulties related to copyrights, to some legal aspects, to needs to be, of course, coordinated. However, a potential way forward is to have joint standards development working groups or teams, like, for example, the MPIG, the Motion Picture Expert Groups, which has been a very successful product in the market quite many years now, between ISO and ITU. So we have some success stories. So we get these stories if we manage to bring the right stakeholders together and starting a dialogue. What could be a little bit challenging in the water industry is that you have a rather diversified set of new potential stakeholders beyond the traditional ICT. So in that sense, you need to bring them on board and start a discussion on potential collaboration and areas of collaboration. Over to you, Eunah.
Thank you. I think it's good to hear that now that this ISO, ITUT, and then IC, they make collaborative things, so that we hope that from now on we have a less duplicate standard in the same area. I think that
never duplicative.
Yeah, but
never duplicative.
But sometimes you have to look at all the different the standard body, and they have a different members, memberships, and then so on. That's also not so easy for the small industries. I think that it's a bit different from the sense analytics. Basically, they are on the national levels, and then I see many nice reports from the sense analytic Edge together about the landscape of existing standards and things. I think that Philippe, in your side, you already make a good job to make people aware of the existing standards. Do you have anything to add to what could be the best way to avoid the people look at what kind of standards really I have to apply on my solution when I want to implement something? So what's the best way to make them aware of the existing standard and where exactly should implement and stuff?
Oh, I don't know. We do some kind of market bottom-up webinar or workshop. So I think obviously more we organize events because it's not so popular. So I think this is very important. What should also be very important is then having a mechanism today does not exist to that collectively a set of market stakeholders can maybe report the wish to improve standard. Because at this moment, if you want to improve a standard, you need to go to the national body. There is not much mechanism so flexible, such as ETSI industry-specific group. Because the mechanism of send workshop agreement, it's a bit more complex, and you need also to have very clear topic. But for instance, suppose that you have a standard and maybe 100 or a big number of stakeholders are wishing to do things. because from the standard body, sometimes when we discuss with them, they are so isolated, they have no clue about issues. They say, no, we have no issues. Because and then when we do a completely open market stakeholders webinar or workshop, wow, we have plenty of guys say, yeah, we try to, for instance, we are in Africa, we want to do a safety plan, a water safety plan based on the science standard, but the science standard is too vague. It's too, I want to have guidance. And then we have few guidance existing, but it would be good if collectively there is a voice, there is a possibility to that the voice of these guys can be fed to the body. Say, hey guys, look at your standard. Maybe there is the gap between the implementation of standard and the need. So we are in this process, but so basically, obviously, keep going with market stakeholders webinar, because then we talk to Sen, look at, we did webinar with 100 of stakeholders, and they all express, sometimes we are doing poll at the webinar, and we express and we feedback to the Sen group. But this should be reinforced. I think we should reinforce the way, the mechanism to maybe we are not looking to sometime to have a new standard, because it might take 2-3 years, but sometimes you can have technical report or guideline linked to standard. And that could be quite good.
I think it's good to hear. We hope that you advertise such a workshop and webinars a bit more often to everybody, so that now we can listen the Sedlic's, in a sense, the view on this. Aitor, I think that the one of the we are also the DW 2020, the project, we are always try to advertise what we are doing, and then especially using the existing standards, and then also you are an ICT for water, so the role is really important to exactly what Tanya says, that you should make the people more aware of the existing standard and its scopes, and so what kind of standards are really out there, and then what's the gap, and then how we could avoid the reinventing the wheel. And then I think there's such things with this role of the ICT for water, and then that's very important. I really think it's a right moment that you kind of wrap up on these questions on your experience.
Well, from my experience on the ICT for water cluster, and also on the promotion of standards, of digital standards for the water sector, is just to make the companies, and to also to advertise the companies as the standards are there. That well, the position here in Europe is to adopt in the water sector FIWARE compatible architecture, because we decided, most of the key players, to be compatible with there as a reference architecture, just to do not reinvent the wheel. It is true that there is another initiatives worldwide, like for example the OEZ sensor things, that it's with a wider community, also from Europe, and also we need also to convey with them, with this kind of architecture, that reference standard architecture that there are there. There is also another one that is a Web of Things, that is more transversal, that is moving more on energy and mobility, but it's quite similar to the part of the standards in Europe of the context broker in terms of API and those things. So I think that, and also sensor things with water ML that evolves to sensor things, it's also adopting this kind of resource as a thing, or Web of Things, or open APIs that are under most convening same digital architecture to consume and explore the data. So from my perspective, is just to bridge all the companies, not only big players in water, but also small companies, SMEs, that not only work with water itself physically, but all other players that are offering digital services for water, to be aligned with these standards, to tell them that the standards are there, and there is a wide, I think there is the big potential that is a wide community supporting the maintenance, the updating, and the elaboration of new data models that could be reused by everyone.
Great. I saw that Philippe raised his hand. Philippe?
Philippe is without the headphones.
Okay. But he raised his hand. So I would like to hear his opinion. But okay, I think he's talking with someone else when I see his video. I think that in the meantime, maybe there could be that we are already the one, but I think it would be important that I have one final question. I would like to ask you all if you have any knowledges on any standard catalog that open to contribute, so that here people are listen, not only the existing standard, but they want to contribute. Then do you obviously, Alberto, you have this is a still open one. But is there any other? We will share the slide and then video. So probably this link what Alberto provided will be shared, so that everybody can go to the smart data models, so that you can contribute and check the current smart data models and then see. And do you have any? Yes, good. And he put it in the chat box. And is there any other currently open to the contribution?
Yeah, I wanted just to add it, Philippe, to add because I forgot when you asked me. I discuss about how to improve from my side. But if I look at the global discussion, because one day I wake up and then I decide, when there was a call for mixing the physical and digital, I have designed the FIWARE for water. So I was at the origin of bringing that. But even now, I'm trying to push FIWARE for agriculture, and it's not easy. I see still that all these discussions are still in this kind of club, still also where people are, obviously, if people are interested by ICT, they can learn a lot how to use the standard, how to interop, and it's okay. But I still believe that we could open up much more broader to this club, and you might maybe look at other channel of let's say finding water-related stakeholders. For instance, we are working with Water Europe and so on, because when we invite Suez in our project, I'm talking about FIWARE for water, it took quite a while before Suez understand FIWARE, and because I say Suez VIP, today they are even quite a fan of that. But it seems that there is still quite a communication exercise to do to break the ice with the non-ICT community in the water. But people which are touch ICT, I think the manager level and so on, because nobody is aware about the importance. For instance, they work on many things like water leakage and so on, but then they have their own solution. So I think maybe my suggestion is also to try to find as many other water-related channel, and maybe under some other water-related organization, in order to bring this nice message to them, because it seems that some isolation between the world water related and this what ICT for water, for instance.
Yes, I think this is really important. Yes, that we are on the ICT side, and then the real water stakeholders, they are not aware, and then although we bring the very nice standard, it's important to make them understand and then use and then changes. I would give the floor to each of you, that including my last question of the open contribution. Maybe you could give the last remarks, that if you want to deliver to the audience, that each of you maybe go on the very short, because we are already 5 minutes over the time, so that very shortly, just to wrap up your messages, including if you know some contribution is opened. Who wanna start?
I do.
Okay, yes.
So my summary is that standardization is complex. This is not going to change. With Agile standardization, maybe, I'm not saying for sure, maybe we can meet digital markets, but there is no option outside the standardization. So it's a must because we want to interchange data. This is something which is increasing. So Agile standardization could be a solution. I would recommend to go to smartdatamodels.org and to check this out.
And Philippe, the last remarks that you want to the wrap-up comments from your side. What do you want to?
Yeah, in fact, okay, for my side of this physical related standard and SEN, I would like to tell people that if you want to change standard, please raise your voice, because more people raise a voice that in particular they want to have detail and guideline, because at least guideline to standard. More we know this kind of demand, more we can influence the standard to add this part. So don't hesitate, because the standard also are done for the people, and the people need to express their voice on that.
Thank you. Ramy?
Thank you. So my final takeaway message out of today's discussion, I think standards are not a luxury. Standards specifically in smart water management with the environmental impact dimension are important. As an industry, we need to come up with new innovative ways of working together, collaborating together, and it's always, the platforms are always open. And to your earlier